Hi, Acadiana. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics on this Friday afternoon. It is midday and it's kind of a humid one out here once again. The showers and thunderstorms have been moving across Acadiana. We're going to go ahead and see that continuing on through the rest of the afternoon, but we're going to be focusing a little bit more here on our tropical weather across the Atlantic Basin, which has been very, very quiet over the last several weeks due to some Saharan dust. But there are some hints in the computer models that things may be changing as we head into the month of August. Let's go ahead and take a real quick look outside and see what's going on right now. We have generally cloudy skies with some rain that's starting to fill into the region. Temperatures so far here in Lafayette have hovered in the lower 80s. We're at 82 degrees, but that heat index is still hovering around 90. Some light rain starting to come down, but there are some heavier downpours that are out there too. And as we look at the radar here, you can see that there's plenty of rain out there, with the heaviest amounts of rain now coming on shore here across parts of Vermilion Parish. So if you live south of the LA 14 corridor, you're already starting to see some rain. If you live along the LA 14 corridor, you are going to be seeing some moderate to heavy rain here fairly soon. Also, the Highway 90 corridor, which is more spotty in nature, with the daytime heating kicking up some of those showers and thunderstorms. And then you've got a tremendous amount of moisture that extends well into the offshore waters as well. So it does appear that the rainy conditions are going to be sticking around for Acadiana at least for a couple more days, maybe 3 more days, and then things will start to improve as we head toward the latter part of the weekend and the early part of next week. Again, there's a lot of moisture that's available out there. A little bit of dry air kind of right there in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, but really not anything that's going to prevent the rains from coming down. In fact, this sounding wind at 12Z here, which is 7 o'clock in the morning, so most likely this area has moistened up since earlier this morning. The precipitable water is still running over 2 inches, so again, some of those showers and thunderstorms could be healthy rainfall producers over the next day or so. So let's go ahead and get started on the tropical weather. And the Gulf of Mexico, at least the eastern 3/4 of the Gulf of Mexico, is looking just fine. There's no issues that are out there right now, but we still have an upper trough that's currently back here toward the northwest of us, and then we've got more of a surface trough that's been draped right here along the Gulf Coast, and kind of an old frontal boundary that's still meandering here over south central Louisiana. So in the upper levels, you can see the flow is coming in more from the west-north or west-southwest, while at the surface the flow is coming in due south. So we got moisture coming in basically at all levels of the atmosphere, and that's why things are quite moist out there. But there are no signs of any tropical development across the Gulf of Mexico, and I don't think we'll have anything to worry about there for the next couple of days. For our friends that are working in the offshore waters, probably seeing some 2 to 4 foot seas farther away from the coast, more than likely about 1 to 3 as you're within 60 nautical miles of the coastline. But the seas do get a little bit rougher out there, but of course winds and seas are always higher around showers and thunderstorms, so the western part of the Gulf of Mexico might be a little rough for some of our friends that are working out there today. Let's go ahead and look at the Caribbean, or the Central American satellite. And yesterday we had a big flare-up of thunderstorms over the middle part of the peninsula there, but right now most of the rains are here over the extreme southwestern portion of the Caribbean, over southern Nicaragua and getting into Costa Rica, and then you've got some other activity that's now starting to move here into the Pacific. I think the Pacific is actually going to get a little bit more active here in the next couple of days versus the Atlantic, but I think the Atlantic is going to catch up. But the Pacific side has been eerily quiet so far this year. I believe we've only had 1 or perhaps 2 named storms on the western side of Central America in the Pacific. The Caribbean right now is relatively quiet. We do have a lone tropical wave that's moving right about here in the middle part of the Caribbean Sea, and we've got more of an upper low that's now east of the Bahamas, and that's going to continue to bring some showers and thunderstorms to the northern parts of Puerto Rico, into the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba, and some better chances for rain over parts of the Bahamas as well. We've got another tropical wave that's kind of working its way in here toward the east to give you kind of a better shot of what we're looking at on the tropical Atlantic satellite here. We've got that tropical wave that's kind of moving off toward the west here, another tropical wave here, and one that is just now coming off of the African coast that we looked at yesterday. And what I'll tell you is the more these tropical waves hold together and move across the Atlantic, the more moisture they're starting to add out here into the atmosphere where things have been so dry and there's been the Saharan dust. Now, we still have a lot of Saharan dust that's out here over the Caribbean. You can see that when the daylight hits it there. And you're also still seeing some decent amounts of Saharan dust coming off the African continent. But the more these tropical waves start to work their way across the Atlantic Ocean, the more moisture they're going to eventually add to the atmosphere. And when there's more moisture to tap into, these tropical waves will have a better chance at succeeding and becoming tropical depressions or tropical storms as we go into the future. So there's the far eastern Atlantic. Again, you can kind of see the tropical waves moving off, and there's yet another low pressure area, monsoonal trough that's out here, and that is going to emerge over the eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean here over the next couple of days as well. So things are we're starting to see at least a pattern change after things have been quite sleepy out in the Atlantic Ocean since we had Hurricane Beryl right there around the 4th of July. Now, I want to show you the tracks of most of our storms that we have during the month of August. And again, when we watch these tropical waves work their way across the Atlantic Ocean, this particular area that's right here east of the Windward Islands, Leeward and Windward Islands, is basically where more than 70 tropical systems have made their way tracked across these areas since 1944. Between 50 and 70 in the orange, and then you've got about 30 to 50 in the green. So really, most of the Atlantic Basin is going to be open for business as far as a normal hurricane season. And we usually see those the frequency of tropical activity really ticking upward, especially after we cross into August and more likely as we go into September. So things are going to be ramping up. They're just not going to be happening in the next several days here. And the National Hurricane Center is not expecting any big stuff coming for at least the next 7 days. But the conditions, as far as the water conditions, are definitely there. Basically everywhere where you would have a development zone or a track of a tropical storm or hurricane this time of the year, the water temperatures would be able to sustain anything there, and the heat potential just continues to get higher and higher and higher. This is the measure of that warm water at the surface, but also how deep it goes. And we get more concerned when tropical systems are actually moving across the areas where you have that high heat potential, such as areas here in the northern Caribbean, south of Cuba and Jamaica, and then south of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. When you have these very warm waters and the waters go very deep below the surface, when a tropical system works its way across those areas, it can go ahead and tap in to some of that very warm water, and occasionally you can see some rapid intensification. So not anything to worry about while it's just sitting there, but if we get some tropical disturbances moving through those areas and you get just the right atmospheric conditions to go along with it, you can probably get something to develop or maybe even strengthen fairly quickly in those areas. So a couple of things that have been going against hurricane season has been the wind shear. Although we are starting to see a big weakening here now across much of the Gulf of Mexico, and even the far eastern Atlantic is starting to see considerably less wind shear than what we were seeing earlier in the season. And Saharan dust has also been the thing that's been inhibiting tropical development. Dry air and Saharan dust basically covering most of the Atlantic basin. So when these tropical waves work their way across, they end up running into that and they basically get choked out. But the more these tropical waves come off the African coast and work their way across, the more moisture they eventually add into the atmosphere. So this dry air will start to dissipate and the Saharan dust should go along with it. And we can even see these trends now happening. This is the water, or this is the moisture, the humidity that's basically in your mid-levels of the atmosphere. And as we just let this loop run, you can see the considerable amount of dark brown, which is the dry air. But notice as we go through time, the development zones that are down here over the Atlantic Ocean, you're getting more moisture there, as well as the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. It turns a little bit more green. So there is a little bit more moisture that's being added to the atmosphere just about each and every day. So that is one sign that we're starting to see the changes happening. Precipitable water is another thing. It's been very dry over much of the Atlantic Ocean, and the Saharan dust kind of coming off the African continent. And this is going into next week, but if you go into the following week, see, you're starting to see more moisture here over certain regions of the tropical Atlantic. So there may be some water for these systems to work with as they move off to the west, and therefore we could get some development. So the GFS model going out next couple of weeks, we're going all the way out through August the 7th. You got a few tropical waves kind of being noted on here, maybe a little extra moisture going into next weekend over the northern part of the Caribbean islands, and then maybe some of that moisture making its way into the Gulf of Mexico a little farther down the road. Also, you get cold fronts that come off the east coast, which sometimes, if you get something trying to develop in this particular area, can pick them up and whip them back out this direction. But when you don't have these fronts here, they tend to kind of follow this big ridge of high pressure that's out over the Atlantic Ocean, and they just kind of end up moving their way over toward the Gulf of Mexico. But there are several fronts that will be moving across the northern part of the country, so we'll watch those for the potential of picking something up and turning it away from the Gulf of Mexico. The Euro model, though, is getting a little bit interesting because earlier this week, we showed you that the GFS was showing some potential development over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. That was, I think, on Tuesday of last week. And then the Euro kind of bit on about Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember. And now the Euro is really biting onto one of these tropical waves. This is looking at the period of time. We're now starting to get into the 1st of August. You got a low right about there. Watch this moisture, though, as it continues to kind of move off toward the west, and eventually the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, 4th, 5th of August, you get a low pressure area. That is an actual tropical system that the Euro is trying to work out. So this is August the 5th, and you can see it's a weak low, but it's definitely a low. This is more than what we've seen on any of the computer models over the last several weeks. Now, I also want you to think about this. This is Monday, August the 5th. This is a week from Monday, so you're talking 9 to 10 days away. We'll talk about your preparation again and what you need to do to be ready just in case something were to move in. Now, I will say that the GFS model on the same day is not showing the same thing. Remember, the Euro had the low right about here, but it does show a bit of a trough. And this right here that's showing up on the GFS is the result of the moisture that was out over here, making its way off toward the west-northwest like the Euro did and developing a low there. So even though there's not a lot of agreement, it is a trend, we'll call it. We're showing that there's a little bit of an agreement that there's going to be some kind of low pressure area, perhaps down in the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. So again, these are some of the little signs that we try to look for before any tropical systems do develop. And again, when you've got the Euro model showing a low and a bit of a trough in the western Gulf of Mexico on the GFS, both of these being on the same day like this, and with the other trends of everything else that I've showed you, the potential for having tropical weather to come in starting at the beginning of August, really not out of the question. And as I've told one person who made a comment a couple of days ago, if I thought that there'd be a tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico during August, my answer is yes. I do think there will be something in the Gulf of Mexico because there almost always is a tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico during the month of August. Where it goes, I can't tell you, but there probably will be at least some action starting to come up here over the next several weeks because you know what? It always does. So this is why I keep showing you what you need to do right now. So let's just pretend that whatever the Euro is predicting is actually going to become something and come toward the northern Gulf Coast a week from Monday. You need to have these things in your possession, and all these things are readily available at all the different stores. Also, make sure that you know where your important papers are, your IDs, your insurance, and take pictures of those on your phone. That way you've got a backup as a digital. And the tool set, kids entertainment, make sure you got plenty of your pet supplies, pet food, bedding, medicines, anything like that that you would possibly need. So these are all of the things that you can do right now. And I kind of tell folks as we get into the weekend, if you want to try to start to build on this, just think of, there's 15 different sets of items that are on here. Grab 5. Just grab 5 this weekend, and then you can say, well, I've got to start going. And then remember, there's another kind of list of things that you will do when, let's say we've got something out there and it could be threatening within a week. So this, we might be talking about this Monday or Tuesday of next week. That's when you need to make sure that you've got a couple of different plans. Are you going to stay home or are you going to leave? Again, at this point, we don't know if this is going to be anything or if this could be something strong. But this is also to kind of take inventory of the things in your home, especially outside, and what you're going to need to move. Make sure you got a full tank of gas. Make sure the propane tanks are full as well. And again, if there's something that the models are showing that might be looking big and coming toward our direction, you can always go ahead and make a reservation somewhere if you need to evacuate. I mean, hopefully you've got a friend or family that you can go stay with, but if you don't, and you're not going to be going to the shelters, you might need to make reservations. I always have done that in the past because I've always had to work during hurricanes, but I would always make reservations, but I always would do it in a way that I can know that I can make a reservation and cancel it the day before just in case we didn't have to use it. So if you can do that, that's always a good thing. And then once you have your plan put together, make sure you alert your family and your neighbors as well of what your plan is. That way, if something big does happen, we're not looking for you. We always know where you are. So those are just a couple of lists. If you want to grab 5 things that are on this list, I think that'd be a very easy thing for you to do this weekend. And then that way you'll at least get a jump start on what you need to do to prepare for hurricane season, because the peak of the hurricane season is now just about 6 or 7 weeks away. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you go on this Friday. I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. I know I love hanging out with y'all for lunchtime. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also turn on those notifications. And if you go and visit my channel, I got a nice little quick video of a happy weekend for Eunice. It's got 5 or 6 nice shots of a beautiful community there in St. Landry Parish. Kind of want to go around to different little towns, and every Friday going to just have a happy weekend to whatever communities out there. We've done Abbeville, we've done Eunice, and there was one other one that we did, Rain. We did Rain last weekend. So if you want to check those out, they're just video shorts on YouTube. If you want to check them out, they're just a little fun that I'm doing on my YouTube channel. I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker, and I will see you on Monday.